I was born in 1936 in Perry, Arkansas, 82 years ago. My name is Lydia Ann Reinhardt Wilson. Shall I tell all of it? But Mama left Daddy because he drank and mean when he got drunk. He could whip everybody, and he was abusive. But he would always pick on my brother. He was 7 years older than me, and he never did abuse me much, except he would thump me on the head. And I swore up and down I'd never thump one of my kids on the head. As far as I know, I never did. So Mama left him, and we moved to Springdale, Arkansas. Mama and Daddy divorced, and he was out of our lives for quite a while. My neighbor took me to church one night on a Saturday. They were having a children's crusade at the First Assembly of God, and I was 11 years old, and the very first time Jesus spoke to my heart, I went to the altar. I never knew how I got there, but I remember praying and asking Jesus in my heart. And I went home and told Mama and Daddy and my brother that I had gotten saved, and they all treated it like, oh, that's fine. But they never saw that I got to go to church anymore. And then when we moved to Springdale, when I was 11, a little after 11, the Nazarene Church was 2 blocks in front of my sister's house, up a side street, and I started going to Sunday school there. And I told the Lord, if you will keep me while I'm growing up and a teenager, and not let me get into sin, deep sin, or any of that, when I get old enough to do what I want to do, I'll give you my life. And the Lord answered my prayer. Joe and I, we met, and I lived in Springdale, and he lived in Fayetteville, and so he liked me, and so he come and started going to church. We went together for 8 or 9 months before we got married. He was in the milk business, delivering milk to the houses, and then he went retail, delivering to stores. And we were doing quite well financially. We bought a house, a modest house, and in the fall of 1956, he told me he thought he had a call to preach. Scared me to death. I said, I don't know how to be a preacher's wife. Let's see, I would have been 22. There was an old woman at church that was a prayer warrior, and he asked her on Wednesday night. Her name was Sister Potter, and he said, would you pray for me? And she come back on Sunday morning, met him at the door, shook his hand, and said, Joe, is the Lord calling you to preach? And he said, yes, ma'am. And she said, well, answer that call. And Joe went down to the basement, and he said, I don't know when I'll be home. I'll be home when I get an answer. And he stayed in that room and prayed until he knew he was called to preach. He was afraid to open his eyes. He backed out of the room because he said, I knew I would have seen Jesus or the Holy Spirit standing there. And my husband became a preacher in 1956. But anyway, the pastor's wife, our old pastor's wife, told me, said, you don't have to be a pastor's wife. Do you know how to be Joe's wife? And I said, yes. Because we'd already been married, you know, for 4 years by then. And I said, yes. And she said, you just be Joe's wife, and whatever needs to be done in the church, be free to do if you can, but just be Joe's wife.